People think they know the truth, right? Everybody thinks they know. Even if you're wrong, you think you're right. And in a way, you're not.
It's Wednesday, April 24th, Thursday, April 25th. If you're on the East Coast, across the pond, or down under, and this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including on Deep Talk Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, we have them free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at our store, and the SOR Newswire. Don't forget, our website is under construction, so you'll have to wait a couple weeks for that. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Nsuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Head to our website, click on the Nsuho banner, and subscribe today. Author Chad Lewis is a researcher and lecturer on topics of the strange and unusual. And of course, you know, if you've listened to this show for a while or you're looking forward to the first time, we do a lot of strange and unusual around here. With a psychology education background, Chad has spent the last 20-plus years traveling the globe in search of unique and bizarre stories and history. He's gone after chupacabras in Puerto Rico, Tata Duende in Belize and Guatemala. He's visited Point Pleasant in West Virginia for Mothman. He's been up to Canada looking for the Wendigo, Bigfoot across North America, the Momo of Missouri, UFOs across the United States, and everything weird and strange in the sea, in the air, on the ground, in the forest. You can find all of Chad's books. He's got 16 of them by going to his website. Go to chadlewisresearch.com. Highly suggest you do this. He's got a great set of hair as well. Because, you know, David Weatherly really recommended Chad to come on this show and said, Dave, you got to have Chad on. I said, Dave, you got a great head of hair. How's Chad's hair before we bring it on? He goes, it's fluffy and curly. It looks just fantastic. I said, we got to have him. We got to have him. Chad Lewis, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
Hey, good evening to you.
Told you I'd get the hair in there, man. That's a good mane you got.
Yes, you have to. You know, if I ever quit researching the supernatural, I'm going to get into hair modeling.
You should. You totally should. I'll be there with you. I know Weatherly will be there with you as well because he's got a good mane. Very nice mane. Even though the time I hung out with him up here when he was in British Columbia last year, he didn't even bring his top hat. I was a little upset about that. But either way, we had a good time. Chad, I want to introduce you to our listeners because this is your first time on the show. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get involved with the paranormal? How do you go from a psychology degree all the way to traveling the world looking for the strange and unusual?
It actually predates all of my college research. I blamed my interest in the paranormal on my home state of Wisconsin, because not only do we have the UFO capital of the world here in Wisconsin, we have three of them. 3 different cities all claim to be the UFO capital of the world. And I grew up near one of those. And when I was in high school, I was interested in why so many people were seeing UFOs in that town. So I went there and interviewed witnesses and ended up studying psychology that fall at college. And that's what got me interested in why some people believe in the paranormal and others do not. And I was really interested in human perception and belief systems. And it really propelled from there through graduate school and beyond. I actually ended up doing my master's thesis on students' belief in the paranormal. So again, it's Wisconsin's fault.
Well, I mean, is it because there's a lot of cheese around there? You are in the cheesehead
Certainly
state.
Cheese and beer. I mean, Wisconsin is a drinking culture like no other. If you travel the world, no one drinks like the people here in Wisconsin seem to do, which may account for some of the weirdness we have here.
Almost Canadian, my friend. Sounding very much that way, and I think we're going to get along just fine. You went to school for psychology. How does psychology play a role in your investigations and research in the paranormal?
Well, I think because I did both my bachelor's and master's work in that field, a lot, as you know, of paranormal research is interviewing witnesses, talking to people. And for me, having the background, I think it adds quite a bit when you're interviewing somebody, not only to avoid leading questions and which questions not to ask and which to ask, but also looking for signs of them being deceitful or maybe trying to hide something. But it's often very tricky because when you're dealing with somebody who's had an experience that could change their belief system, change their whole life, some of the emotions and the mannerisms that they exhibit are the same as being deceitful. You know, not making eye contact, acting nervous, touching their face quite a bit. So all those things on their own are meaningless, but when you can start to add them up, avoid leading questions, I think it plays a big part in what I do, because most of the time when these things happen, I'm not there. It's only after the fact that I'm interviewing people or I'm on site trying to figure out what's going on.
Do you enjoy the hunt? Is there still a thrill after 2 decades?
Well, I think, as you know, any researcher in this field who gets into it, whether you're into cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, crop circles, whatever it is, if you get into this field thinking, I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to have a case where it's completely solved, you're going to burn out very quickly. I know a lot of my colleagues who started back when I did, they burned out very quickly because that's the way they viewed it. Early on, I was lucky enough to see it as an adventure. That, yes, the legends, the folklore, the superstitions, those are wonderful things, but the adventure of it all is what entices me, that hitting the back roads, digging up the folklore, talking to witnesses, those are the things I like, even more so than trying to put an explanation on some of these things that just, at least in my experience, are not solvable, to me anyway.
Is it curiosity, or are you one of the lucky ones who has had an experience with something that really set you off on this quest?
It really is just curiosity. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, I've never had an experience where I would consider it was 100% paranormal. Now, weird things have happened, but it's always just enough to make you wonder, was there a rational or logical explanation to that? It's never anything where people are speaking in tongues, or you're with an abductee when they're getting taken, those sorts of things. So for me, it's the curiosity, the adventure of it, not knowing what happens when we die, or if we're alone in the universe, or if we've discovered every known creature on the planet. And that's what keeps me going, is that curiosity of not knowing and having an open mind. And it's amazing that when you start looking into one thing, you may go down an entirely different track. For instance, I was working on a book on Wisconsin ghosts many, many years ago, and my car popped a tire right outside of a lodge up in northern Wisconsin. And lo and behold, the lodge is where John Dillinger, a famous gangster in the 1930s, had a shootout with the authorities at the time. And that led me to a whole realm of ghosts of gangsters that people reported throughout the U.S. of, these infamous gangsters that were often shot down at these locations. Many believe their spirits were still haunting those places. So oftentimes it's amazing. You're researching one thing and off on another.
Do you feel a little ripped off that you haven't had that major occurrence yet that really, really turns the tide in your research, or your own personal idealisms of what you believe? Well, what's interesting is I've talked with many researchers who've been doing this much longer than I have. There's some of the old-timers that were doing it since the 1970s, and a lot of them have not had an experience. And I think it comes back to that fact that if you're getting into the field thinking that things are going to happen every time you're out, maybe you watch some of the shows on TV and you think that every time you go to an alleged paranormal place, something bizarre is going to happen, I think you'll get disappointed very quickly. For me, that shift was essential many years ago, because I can see, for me, the interest is in the folklore of how these stories progress and how they morph over the years. You may talk to a senior in the community that remembers a legend in the area one way, and then you talk to teenagers and they have a completely different version of the same legend that has just changed over 50 years. We have one of those in my community, where the legend is a lady named Agnes McVie murdered 60-plus men because of her hatred for men along the Gold Rush Trail back in the day when it was still lawlessness up here in British Columbia. Yet there is no proof whatsoever that she even came into this area. We know that there's a lady in the Vancouver area named Agnes McVie with a criminal record. But, I mean, it's amazing how these legends just take off on their own. Well, sometimes for a lot of people, seeing is believing. But what I found is the exact opposite is true as well, is that believing may equal seeing. That I have gone to so many places where a legend, for instance, here in Wisconsin, we have a case called the gravestone of Kate Blood, and it was said that she murdered her family. And now when you go to her gravestone, what appears to be blood will ooze out of the gravestone, and you can touch it and feel it. And people go there and see her spirit as well. And, the legend is great, but the history is not accurate. It turns out she didn't kill her family. She was an upstanding member of the community who died at a young age, and she was sorely missed in that community. But people that go there still have that experience, even though there doesn't seem to be any rational explanation as to why they should be having it. So I found over the years of study that if somebody believes something's going to happen,
they're much more likely to experience something when they go there, whether they're opening themselves up to experience it, or they're manifesting it or creating it, or maybe even imagining it themselves. But it seems to be the case that if somebody goes somewhere expecting something to happen, most likely it will happen.
When you talk to people who have had a single experience or a multitude of experiences, is there a difference in the person who has only had one singular opportunity to experience something weird comparatively to someone who has had multiple experiences, maybe with multiple different genres of the paranormal?
I'm always amazed at people that contact me that have not only seen Bigfoot, but they've seen a UFO and they've lived in a haunted house, just how comfortable they are with it. It's not a big deal to them. Whereas if somebody contacts me and they saw a UFO they couldn't explain and had never experienced anything like it in their entire lives, for them it's a very important matter. And oftentimes the people that have only had one experience, they weren't out looking for it, they weren't out searching for it, they just happen to have something they can't explain and they're looking for answers. And where others seem to be these, paranormal hotspots themselves, walking around where no matter where they live, whatever country or part of the country they live in, whatever they do, paranormal phenomena seems to follow them.
Oh, I wish I knew people like that. I really
yeah,
do.
Me too.
I'm being a little sarcastic right now because that's been my last 7-8 years now. It's kind of weird, but sometimes it just happens. You never know when there's going to be an alien knocking at your window or something like that. But Chad, as we continue on here, with your 16 books that you have written around these subjects, is there a story to warm us up that really sticks out for you in something that you have written, one that you won't forget?
Well, I hate to mention Wisconsin again and turn off some of your listeners from ever visiting this wonderful state, but perhaps one of the weirdest cases ever came out of this state, and it involves Ed Gein. And many of your listeners might not recognize that name, but they'll recognize some of the movies they based on Ed's life, including Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs, and many, many others. And Ed was a murderer from Wisconsin, and most people remember him that way. But before he was captured, he was well-liked in the small town he lived in. He would babysit for kids, and he would bring neighbors over what he called a venison stew for them to eat. And one neighbor recalled his mother getting this, and he told me that it had such a terrible smell, she threw it away, which is a good thing because Gein's real passion was to wait until it got dark. Then he would head out to the cemeteries for over a decade and dig up the remains of women that reminded him of his own deceased mother. And then, without getting into too many details that are not fit for radio, he would bring those remains back to his farmhouse and use them for lampshades and furniture in his home. And he had human skulls he was using as cereal bowls and the like. And when we caught him and discovered how truly evil his crimes were, they wanted to open his house as a roadside attraction, a museum of horrors that you could go and see and pay to visit. But mysteriously, it burned to the ground. The townsfolk torched it. But Ed's spirit still seems to be haunting the small town of Plainfield. There are numerous locations around town where he is still thought to haunt those locations. And those kind of stories stick with me the most because it's easy to research vampires, chupacabra, werewolves, wendigo, and yes, folklore tells that these things are scary and dangerous. But on a certain level, I think my mind anyway believes I'm probably not going to be attacked by a werewolf. I'm probably okay. But the human monster, that's a whole different story.
When it's real, it's real. And when it's paranormal, you just don't know if it's real. Out of all the stories that you have covered over time, as we got about 5 minutes to go before we go to break here, Chad, is there ones that were just so unbelievable? You said there's no way this could be true, but maybe the research that you did pushed your mind into different thoughts?
Lake monsters really had that effect for me. The last 10 years I've been doing a ton of research on lake monsters, and when you think of it, that the lakes might be filled with some unknown species of animal that we didn't know was there, or perhaps a species that was thought to have been extinct for millions of years, and maybe it's not quite extinct. For a lot of people, that's a hard thought to at least entertain. And for me, I was always the same way. And I always would be asked whether or not I believed in lake monsters, and I would always give the safe answer of 50-50. Maybe they are there, maybe they're not. And it wasn't until I was working on a book about a creature called Peppy that lives on the Mississippi River in a lake that I was asked the same question, and I found myself really leaning toward that it actually was there based on the long history dating back to the first native peoples there, all the way up to modern times and sightings and photographic evidence that I think something's there, whether it's flesh and blood, I don't know. But some of these lake monster stories and sea serpents, these leviathan of the deep, if you will, it really changed my belief from thinking, they're probably not really there to, I would, if I had to bet, I would put my money on there's something there.
With only a few percentage points of the ocean actually investigated, that we actually know what is going on, do you think there are sea monsters, kraken, megalodon, still swimming around in the deepest parts of the ocean, and we just haven't had that interaction with them?
I think that's not only a possibility, but maybe it's probable. And then on the flip side, there are so many things that I think that's possibly a true statement, but on the flip side, there's so many things that would discount that. And that's the baffling part, that some of these lake monsters go decades without sightings. And some of them, the food population isn't there to sustain a breeding population of large predators, but yet they're being spotted. So it doesn't, on one end, yes, flesh and blood, that they're real animals you could capture, you could kill, you could study. That makes a lot of sense to me. But on the other hand, there's so many other supernatural aspects that I think they can't be flesh and blood, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, that's the point. I mean, is it dreams? Is it being on the sea for too long? Is it people who are just having some sort of psychotic neurosis about being on the ocean? What do you think is bringing up these creatures if they're not actually experiencing it?
Yeah, I think it could be a combination of all. Most of the people that I've talked to personally and interviewed that have seen something they deem not of any known species, they're logical, rational, down-to-earth people. A lot of them didn't even believe or don't believe in sea monsters or sea serpents, but what they saw, they're convinced that they've seen something that shouldn't be there. And that's the troubling part, is they're seeing some of these things that, for all accounts, should not be there, but yet they saw it and other people have as well. And for me, after 20 plus years of doing research into the field, I'm left with more questions than answers. And part of that is the frustrating aspect of the research. It's just, again, if you come into it trying to get answers, you're farther ahead of the game than I am.
Are you convinced, though? Or do you still hold, in about 30 seconds or less, do you still hold a real piece of skepticism inside of you as you do research these topics?
It usually depends on the day in which you catch me. That some days I lean one way, some the other, but most cases I investigate, I try to go in right down the middle, not knowing if it exists, and see where the research or evidence takes me.
As you should. Chad, I'm going to get you to hold on tonight as we are completing up the first half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Second half hour coming up right after this. If you want to check out Chad's website, I highly suggest you do. ChadLewisResearch.com. That's ChadLewisResearch.com. 16 books for you to choose from. They're all pretty good, so make sure you pick up one or two or 16. More Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rockin'. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I'm your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Glad to be with you tonight. Remember, if you've missed part of this show or any others, you could always go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. That's where we keep our archives for free. And our website, spacedoutradio.com, currently under construction. We're making it bigger and better for all of you to enjoy. So stay tuned for that in the next couple of weeks. Tonight we are talking with author Chad Lewis. We're getting into monsters all night long. His website, chadlewisresearch.com, got about 16 books on there. And right before the break, we were talking about sea monsters and what could be lurking in the waterways below. Chad, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you here as well. When you go looking for sea monsters, there's so many legends. And, you know, about a 4-hour drive south of me is where the Ogopogo is, in Okanagan Lake, the famed sea monster. Are you looking for reasons why this creature or any of these creatures like Loch Ness Monster or Champ could exist? Or are you kind of looking for reasons that, where would they be? What are they looking for? Because I tend to lean, in my skeptical side, that Ogopogo in my area would be probably one of the giant white sturgeon that comes up from the Columbia River. What's your thoughts?
I'm looking at both angles. I'm looking at what this thing could be if it's a known animal. And here in the States, we get everything from alligator gar to giant catfish, sturgeon. And then I'm also looking at how it fits in the folklore of the area, the impact on the people who have seen it, who believe in it, who think it's there, and how that ties in with the legend itself. I always say that to really experience a lot of these legends, you have to go and be at the site, talk to witnesses, talk to the locals, and see how the legend has affected them too, because the legend is bigger than just the creature or the ghost or what be it itself. It has taken on a life of its own and became this whole community area. So I'm looking at trying to explain what they might be, but also collecting and documenting some of the sightings and the history, the mystery, the background. So it's a little combination of both. You know, a lot of times I've switched in the last, 5 years or so from moving away from trying to give so many theories. I did a book on the Van Meter visitor. It's a giant bat-like creature that was attacking a small town in Iowa in 1903 for 5 nights. And with that book with my co-authors, we explored half a dozen different possibilities of what it could have been, from known creature to ultra-terrestrial. And at the end, came to no hard conclusions. And I've kind of moved away from that a little bit with the newest book I just did on the Big Muddy Monster, this Bigfoot-ish type creature in southern Illinois, that we talked briefly about possibility of it being a bear or a man in a suit. But really, I'm interested in presenting fact from fiction and then letting the reader, the listener, the viewer, whatever, make up their own mind as to what they might think it is.
But at some point, though, you have to draw your own reality and your own conclusions, do you not? Yes, you do. And that's back to lake monsters, that you can look at the possibilities of what it could be out there, but then you start looking at some of the witness reports and the physical descriptions of these things, and it might be able to match somewhat of some known animals, but for the most part, it just doesn't fit in at all. For instance, the Van Meter visitor that I was just referencing, people shot at it in Iowa for 5 nights. Newspapers said that they took deliberate aim and fired at it. At one point, a posse had gathered, and the newspaper said they shot so many shots at it they could have sunk the Spanish fleet. Yet, either they were the worst shots in Iowa, or this thing was impervious to their weapons. And I don't know any known animals that if you shoot at them 100 times, it's not going to affect them. So even though we theorized it might just have been a large bat or a turkey vulture, something of that nature, it doesn't fit when you look at the supernatural elements. And it just, for me, that's the most puzzling and I think aggravating point, is that for so many of these things, I don't come to a conclusion, or I haven't yet. And for a lot of people, that would be, the worst part of doing it, that if you do an entire book on a lake monster and you've never solved it, for them that would be pretty depressing. But for me, on the flip side, I enjoy the fact that 100 years from now, people might be a little hesitant to dip their toes in a lake with a monster story attached to it. It does happen, though, and there's a lot of people who just say, that's a myth, that's just a legend, I don't believe in that stuff, until something happens to them. But when it comes to guns, I have heard so many stories from people who I've interviewed on this show, who have interviewed those who have had an experience in the forest or around where they are carrying a firearm, and they've pointed it at these creatures, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's Dogman or sea monsters or whatever, and for some reason they seem to get this telepathic message, don't shoot, it's really bad news for you, and they lower their weapons. What do you think is causing that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because it does happen quite a bit. People, not only do people get a fear of retaliation from these things, but also dread starts to fill into their head. I've had people say they had a Bigfoot-looking creature in their sight, and they were about to take a shot, and then all of a sudden they were flooded with a belief that it wasn't, that they weren't seeing what they were actually seeing, that almost into abduction and alien literature, that these things, whatever they were filling their head with doubt that you're not seeing a Bigfoot, you're seeing a man. And if you shoot me, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So not only do you have a fear of what these things might retaliate and do, which many witnesses hesitate to shoot because of that, but also almost as though they're putting in a false memory, if you will.
Do you believe, though, that people are just fearing the idea of shooting this creature because they don't know what would happen? Is that what could be doing it? Self-doubt?
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, the fear of, obviously, these creatures are bigger physically than we are, and that fear of maybe they do have some supernatural ability. And then there's also the fear of, what if it turns out to be a man in a suit playing a prank? And am I going to get in trouble? Or if it's an endangered species, or what if it's the only one of its kind, and I essentially, make them extinct? So all these thoughts are running through people's minds. And keep in mind, especially when it comes to Bigfoot or cryptids, that oftentimes the glimpse that they get of these things doesn't last. They're not having a 2-minute interval where these things are just sitting there moving around. Often it's very quick. And often by the time they even make that split-second decision, the sighting's over.
When you talk to people who have raised a gun to this, have any pulled the trigger? And if so, what have the results been?
I haven't spoken with anyone who's actually pulled the trigger and blasted at one of these monsters. There's a lot of historical reports of people shooting at it and having no effect, but I don't know of anyone who's actually shot at it. Certainly not, in a manner to try to kill it. Maybe shooting a warning shot into the air, but in terms of trying to kill it or even defend themselves, I haven't spoken to anyone firsthand.
Well, it's funny because about a week ago, I was talking to a First Nations elder here, and we were talking about Sasquatch. And then I asked him, have you ever heard of any dogman sightings around here? And I believe he came up with the name Squitch or something like that, which is what they call it. And he said when about 20 years ago, he was hunting with his brother-in-law around a lake, and up on a hill, they thought there was 2 bears standing up until his brother sighted them in with his scope and said they were like hunched over werewolves walking through walking through this path, and there was 2 of them. And he just left his rifle and said, "Come on, we better get out of here." And that was pretty much it. Didn't pull the trigger, nothing. I said, well, why didn't he pull the trigger? And he goes, we just didn't feel safe. Just didn't feel safe. And I just can't believe that whether it's here in British Columbia or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, wherever it may be, so many different people who are so unrelated, don't know each other, are continuing to have that same experience.
Yeah, and not only do I get that with people that have been out hunting or just carrying a firearm with them, but also people who experience this who are not armed. They're overcome almost as though a zone of fear or an irrational fear. That I've had many people who have spotted these things at night while driving, and they'll catch them off the side of the road. They'll slow down thinking maybe it's a bear or a deer, and they don't want to hit it and get roadkill and damage their vehicle and hurt the animal, so they'll slow down almost to a stop, and they'll see these things, and even though they're in the safety of their vehicle, by all accounts, they should be able to outrun whatever's there if they had to in their vehicle. but they get the sense that they shouldn't be there, and overcome with the irrational fear that if they don't leave, these things are going to hurt them. And oftentimes, by the time they get to their home and they settle down and relax, they're a little shy and embarrassed about reporting how scared they became. But then they state, I really felt if I didn't leave at that moment, this thing would have killed me.
Unbelievable that so many people are having that experience. You know, we hear a lot of Dogman, we hear a lot of Bigfoot, we hear a lot about Chupacabra. In your experiences and research, as we got about 8 minutes left in until the top of the hour, our guest tonight, author Chad Lewis. Chad, are we missing out on some very important cryptids that people may not be paying attention to and should?
Cryptids, I think, and I've had this conversation with so many researchers, cryptids are like anything else in this world, that some of them have great PR behind them and others do not, and it's not fair. There are many people out there who are singing and musicians who are probably thinking, I'm better than Britney Spears, but yet she's made it, quote unquote, and they haven't. And it's the same with cryptids, that some of the most popular or famous ones are, not the best cases. I like the obscure ones people have forgotten about, that have been lost to time, and some of those are so bizarre that many people won't even consider them. But for me, I always ask, when you deal with the weird, what is too weird? Where do you draw that line? If you're researching vampires, chupacabras, do you draw the line with black-eyed children? Do you draw the line with abductees? What's too weird when you're dealing with the weird? And for me, there's nothing, at least initially, that's too weird that I won't investigate. But I love these stories that don't get the credit that they should because they're so bizarre, and they might be a one-off. They might not have decades and decades of people spotting them. It might be it happened once or twice and never happened again.
Well, and that's why I ask, because we can sit here and do Bigfoot shows every night or Dogman shows every night, but eventually people are going to get sick of that. They want something new. And with a lot of these more obscure stories, there isn't a lot of information to go around. That's why people don't really focus on them outside of things like Bigfoot and Dogman. So in your experiences, what is one of these cryptids that you have covered or researched that has totally intrigued you to the point where you just can't get enough of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of these, the problem is they won't fill up a full book. They might do a monograph, but not a full book. And, to tell the whole story of the legend may take 5 minutes instead of 3 hours. And I think that's what dissuades a lot of people from researching it. One of my favorite creatures that most people have never heard of is called the Tuttle Bottoms Monster. And there's a region in middle of Illinois that's called the Tuttle Bottoms area. It's kind of a wetlandish area, very secluded, even though now cities are kind of encroaching on it. But since the 1950s, people have reported seeing a giant anteater-like creature, 5 to 6 feet tall, roaming under this bridge in this Tuttle Bottoms area. And they say it looks exactly like a giant anteater, but much, much bigger, and that it seems to be lumbering very slowly. And it has the long snout of the anteater, and posses have gathered back in the 60s and 70s. Teenagers would often gather out there with weapons and have a big hunting party looking for the Tuttle Bottoms monster. Of course, they never found it. They spotted it several times, but they never captured it. And the stories go on and on and on. And of course, no one knows why a giant anteater type creature would be in this area. No explanation, but yet 90% of your listeners probably have never heard of it.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I hadn't until a few years ago as well. And that's the thing about, I think the thing about research in this field too is that a lot of researchers that I've talked with are afraid to admit they'd never heard of something. And there's no way you can hear of everything that's going on in the field. And I hadn't heard of the Tuttle Bottoms monster until a couple years ago, and I was there researching it, picking up stories from some of the local researchers who had done some great original research on it. And for me, that's one of my favorite things to do, is travel the country and talk to other researchers who might know of a local legend that hasn't quite gotten out. It's almost as though pre-internet days, when if you didn't live in a community, you wouldn't know that legend because it only went for about 30 miles. And I love going and learning from a lot of these researchers who have been studying some of these local cases for decades.
I'm just blown away by that. I am blown away by that because to me it's eerie. I love the experience. I've seen Sasquatch. And to this day, it's still eerie for me to get that rush that you might be hunted yourselves. Has anybody you've ever talked to felt that they were being hunted by these creatures?
Quite a few, actually, and not only with like the abductees or the experiencers, as many like to call themselves, people who believe they've been taken against their will by some being not of this earth, but also by, Bigfoot type creatures. There was a case of a salvage yard gentleman who hired a part-time police officer to patrol his junkyard back in the 1980s because kids were coming in and ripping the stereos out of them and selling them. And they had a plan that if they saw anyone in the salvage yard, they would call one another, and together they would go and confront them. And together one night about 1:30 a.m., they went to the back of the salvage yard and saw this giant Bigfoot-like creature, except it had glowing red eyes. And this is the part where we were talking earlier. One of them was armed, and he said, "Should I shoot it?" And his buddy said, "No, we don't know what it's capable of. Maybe it'll just make it angry." So they started backtracking back to their shed, and they tried to lure this thing under a motion sensing light, and it seemed to have some intelligence. It avoided that light, and they barricaded themselves in the shed, and it started pounding on the walls and throwing rocks and boulders at the walls. But the witness told me he didn't think that it was trying to get in because based on the size of it and the strength, he estimated that it could have easily smashed through the door if it had wanted, but he felt it wasn't there to hurt them, but to terrorize them, to scare them, and a job it did quite well.
Well, how could it not? If you're standing next to a creature that's 7 to 9 feet tall and in excess of 400 pounds, that could mess you up pretty darn quick, my friend.
Yeah, especially when you're in basically a B-level horror movie set of an old abandoned junkyard where these decaying, rusting cars, make this labyrinth of paths that in the dark, this thing could dart in and out of these areas. And even though you own the place, at night in the country, it's pretty dark. And I think that's even more terrifying that it's on your home turf.
Definitely so. Chad, I'm going to get you to sit on tight here because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. What a show so far with author Chad Lewis. You got to check out his website. It's pretty cool. Great hair. So I'm giving his hair a thumbs up. That's important to us around here. ChadLewisResearch.com is his website. ChadLewisResearch.com. So you can check it on out. 16 books to choose from. Lake Monsters of Wisconsin, Most Gruesome Hauntings of the Midwest. Oh, we got to get into that, Chad. We definitely got to get into that. I'm surprised you have something from Florida. Honestly, with all the weirdness in Florida, you could do about a War and Peace size book on Florida, my friend. It's all good.
Encyclopedia.
Exactly. Chad Lewis coming on up. Let's get into some hauntings with him right after this in Hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you intrigued by by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can
Find
inspire
your
and make
escape
people
where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything is an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social media freedom can take care of that for you. Social media freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Looking for the stories of the strange and weird that you will find hard to find anywhere else? Check out the SOR Newswire on our website. Our writers, led by Captain Shirk, are scouring the world for the oddest and most bizarre stories we can find. Everything from weird crime to suspenseful and paranormal. We're working hard for you to bring you the most intriguing news of your day. Check out the SOR Newswire at spacedoutradio.com today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot THAL. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is watching.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Sebastian Martin is back to talk about the disappearance of Granger Taylor. Yes, we get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hi to everyone listening in Reedsport, Oregon on KDUN AM 1030, on KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, in Noonan, Georgia, WQEE 99.1 FM, and UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans. On the digital side, hi to everyone listening in on Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Lagoria. Lagoria is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, but you're going to have to wait a couple of weeks because we're rebuilding our website to make it more fun and interesting and intriguing for all of you. Tonight we are talking monsters. Our guest, author, researcher, Chad Lewis. His website, chadlewisresearch.com, where you can find 16 of the books he has written on topics from hauntings to sea monsters and everything in between. Chad, thank you so much for being with us. And we got to give a big shout out to David Weatherly as well, because normally every second month we have David Weatherly on this show, but he's caught up with some conferences right now, and he's like, I got a buddy who could fill in. Chad Lewis, great guy, great hair. He's in. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes, I'll try my best to fill in for Dave, who's out probably hunting for things right now while we're talking about it.
I know. Lucky guy. Lucky guy. But you know what? He's carved, just like you have, a really niche life that suits him. And I got to hit up some of these hauntings that you've written about, because you've written a lot of books on hauntings from across the United States, individual states from Illinois to Florida and everywhere in between. How fun is it to find these haunted stories?
Well, by far, the overwhelming majority of people that contact me about the paranormal, they're contacting me about a ghost story, whether it's a house that they live in and they think it's grandma or grandpa haunting it, to one of the most infamous legends in the town they live in. And I'm fascinated by the ghost stuff as much as cryptids and ufology and the rest. Partly because these things happen so frequently at these places that when you're there, there's a possibility that something could happen when you're there. Oftentimes with UFO sightings, the UFO's gone by the time you're there. Most likely you're not going to see it. But with a haunting, they happen so frequently and the stories are so bizarre that you have that opportunity that maybe tonight's the night where something happens.
Tell us about Florida. We actually have a little fun in our news section every night where we always have something weird, strange to end, and it always happens in Florida. It's become tradition now because it's such a strange place. It's got to be that way for hauntings as well.
It is, and Florida's this weird mix. I love the Florida legends, and they're this weird mix of so much of Florida is gated communities and places you wouldn't normally think of being haunted, but then they have so much of wild and undiscovered areas still there as well. And most people know Florida, as you just mentioned, for just the craziness that humans get into, but they have some long history there when you're talking about places in the Everglades and in Key West. And one of my favorite stories of Florida is the old museum in Key West, the historical museum there, because not only do they believe the museum is haunted, where things will move on their own, staff members will be tapped on the shoulder or hear their name being called, but when they spin around, nobody's there. But it's also the same museum where Robert the doll, which is thought to be this cursed doll, is housed there in the museum as well.
We have talked a little bit about Robert on this show, and apparently you do have to have permission to take his photograph, otherwise he will curse you in some way. What do you like about that legend?
Well, I love these dares. There's a lot of dares that pop up around haunted places and legends that you have to do something for the legend to come true, whether you have to run around the gravestone 3 times. But for Robert, it is that if you're disrespectful or you don't ask his permission, which I don't know how he grants it, but if you don't ask his permission to take a photo, or you're disrespectful, or you're making fun of him or condescending to him, that you'll be cursed. And the walls around Robert are filled with letters from people describing the terrible misfortune that took place after they left Robert after taking photos. And the closest I came to something bad happening after Robert is I was actually filming a show called William Shatner's Weird or What many years ago. And we were filming it in Florida, and the crew, we were doing it on Robert the Doll, and the crew had just come from Robert the Doll, and we were filming by a swampy area. And I was talking about the legend of being cursed, and they were all from out of the state. They had no idea. They were laughing about it, joking, and I had done my part. I left, and then about an hour later, they called me and said that while they were packing up their gear, they were backing the big rental SUV they had for all their gear, and they weren't paying attention and smashed out the back window against a tree, and they believed that it was Robert the Doll's curse that had caught up with them.
Oh, no way. No way. So with this museum, outside of Robert, what else is happening there?
Well, it's the same type of thing you would think when you think of a haunted museum, that objects that were put down will go missing and then reappear weeks later in the same spot. Phantom footsteps can be heard walking through the halls. People that believe they're the only ones there will hear somebody talking or catch out of the corner of their eye somebody walking by, but when they try to investigate, nobody can be found. And the staff just kind of chalk it up to, well, we have a lot of old historic artifacts here, and it's dark and kind of creepy. Your mind wanders and plays tricks on you. But they don't necessarily rule it out either. I think for their own sanity, they kind of downplay it. But when you really start to talk to them, some of them will let their guard down and say, yeah, it is kind of creepy working here.
In regards to the state of Florida, with a lot of the strange weirdness, do you think it has to do with the energy of the weather? I mean, it's close to the Bermuda Triangle at the bottom, and you have a plethora of hurricanes every single year there. And I'm wondering if it has to do with that, including the oceans and being surrounded by water. What do you think it is?
I think it's partly the geography of the state, as you mentioned. Many believe that it's old, that there's an energy about it that can affect these things, not only of paranormal nature, but people, the mindset of people as well. But I think on an easier to understand level, it's the nice weather year round just seems to breed craziness. That we don't get those kind of stories up here in the north because people are hunkered down 6 months out of the year, afraid to go out and freeze. So we don't have that weirdness. And I do think the nice weather plays a part of it mentally. They don't have the seasonal affect disorder and they don't have to worry about weather. But I think there's something with the geography as well, because some of these places seem to have been haunted or cursed from the moment humans have set foot on them.
So outside of Robert and maybe the Coral Castle, what else is pretty strange in Florida that we should be checking out? Is it the Black Panthers? Or is it Bigfoot? What do you got?
Yeah, obviously the Black Panthers. My brother lives in Florida. He's lived there about 15 years, never seen a panther wandering around. We know they're there. I think if you're going to Florida, I think you skip the north unless you're going to St. Augustine and visiting the haunted Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, which is a great experience not only to visit Ripley's, but then it's haunted as well. But I think you need to stay down south and in the Everglades. And from there you can do haunted areas. You can do the Skunk Ape, which is, the southern Bigfoot of Florida. Smells like a skunk, looks like an ape, a skunk ape that wanders through the Everglades. And I was down, the last time I was there was a few years back, and I was deep in the Everglades, and I had parked my rental vehicle, and I was up on top of the hood, up on the roof, scouting the area with binoculars, and something caught my eye, and it ran into this small little forested area about a quarter of a mile away from me. And I just caught it running in there, and I started walking toward it to see if I could flush it out a little bit. And in your mind, in Florida, there's a lot of things that could be down there. Black panther, a wild boar, which are pretty dangerous, all kinds of snakes. And then you have, the skunk ape. And as I was getting close, I heard this grunting coming from the woods, which really caught my attention. I had no weapons on me, not even a hatchet or a knife, but I continued on, and eventually it was just a small little deer that was grunting at me, and it ran out of the opposite direction. But it's that wildness of Florida that anything could happen while you're there. It could have been plethora of explanations as to what had run into that forest. Unfortunately for me, it was just a deer and it wasn't the skunk ape.
Let's move on to another state here because we got a lot to cover. Minnesota. Minnesota has a lot of forests, very proud of it, all of its lakes. very outdoorsy, cold as Canada in the wintertime. Good hockey, very good hockey there at the high school and collegiate level. NHL, not so much. But there's a lot of strange happening there as well in haunted locations and mystic creatures. What do you got happening in Minnesota that you've found out?
Minnesota is one of these states where all kinds of oddities seem to happen, from some of the weirdest cryptids you'll ever hear of, all the way down to some of the most bizarre UFO sightings you'll ever hear of. I was just doing a lecture tonight on UFOs of the Midwest, and one of my favorite stories happened in the central area of Minnesota. It happened back in the 1960s. A young man was driving into work when he saw this big shuttle-type spaceship in the middle of the road, and he was going to run it over because he didn't think any of his friends or relatives could believe what he was seeing. And it was a rural, small town, 1,000 people at the time, and as soon as he thinks, I'm going to knock this over to have some proof, his car loses power, dies out. The radio, the engine turns off. So thinking only as a 19-year-old would think, he says, I'm going to get out and push this thing over. Then I'll have proof. So he gets out, walks to the front of his car, and an opening appears on this spacecraft, and he says, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And out get these little 6-inch oil can-like creatures. And they start doing some type of maintenance on the underbelly of the craft. He's watching it. He can't see any eyes or cameras on these things, but he realizes they know he's there. He watches for a few seconds. It felt like eternity. And they did some maintenance, and they got back in the craft and flew off. Meanwhile, he goes back to his car. It starts right back up, and he takes off to the police department, not knowing that they're receiving phone calls from people seeing a UFO in the area. 2 deputies escort him back to the location, and there, the craft is gone, of course, but in the middle of the road is this weird oil-like substance. One of the deputies said it was the weirdest thing he had ever experienced in his entire career. And it must have been weird because they didn't take a sample of it. They didn't take a photograph of it. They just said, this is weird, let's just leave it. And they did. But I love this story because the national media did not portray it as oil can aliens running around. They portrayed it as beer can aliens coming out of this craft. So you can imagine the ridicule that accompanied the story when they're talking about only in Minnesota would you get beer can aliens.
Definitely. With a story like that, I mean, how do the police not take a sample of that? How do they not?
Yes, or a photograph or something.
A photograph. I mean, that just seems ridiculous and everything against the police. If they believe that it was what it was, how do you not take that photograph? Or do you think that they maybe did, but played stupid in order to protect the evidence?
It seems very improbable that they did not take a sample or a photo of some sort, just for the record, just to do their due diligence on their research and investigating. But either they got rid of it or it's tied up and it's never been released publicly. Now, what I found interesting is not long after that sighting, the road was repaved, and many claimed that it was the government trying to cover up the sighting, where others that I talked to in the area told me that the road needed to be repaired. It was a coincidence that there was a UFO sighting there prior to it being repaved.
Are there a lot of UFO sightings annually in Minnesota?
There are, and that's one of the questions that a lot of people ask is, what state has the most UFO sightings? And that's really a hard question to answer because it could be that Connecticut gets the most UFOs, but one, there's no one there researching it to document it, and two, it might be that the people don't feel comfortable reporting it. So I think the Midwest here, we get a lot of UFO reports because, one, there's a lot of researchers with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and other organizations that will document them so everyone knows about them. But also people feel more comfortable in the Midwest bringing these stories forward. And I think that's changed quite a bit over the last 20 years, that 20 years ago, when someone had a UFO story, they would often whisper it to me in a hushed tone, making sure nobody would hear what they were talking about. Whereas nowadays, people are much more comfortable bringing forward their UFO story. And I think that, falls on the heels of other paranormal phenomena that were much easier to talk about, with ghosts and crop circles and the like, where UFOs always had this stigma that they were extraterrestrial, that people who saw them thought they were seeing aliens, where most of the people I talk to just think it's a UFO, unidentified flying object.
In Minnesota, are there a lot of people reporting alien abduction or contact stories?
There are quite a few. The late researcher Craig Lang from Minnesota worked with a lot of Minnesota abductees. And I worked on a few cases with him in the Midwest here as well. Wonderful researcher he was. But a lot of these stories go unknown, that we know the overwhelming majority of people that see a UFO never report it to anyone in an official capacity. They may tell their friends or family, maybe, but we know that they don't report it. And with abductees, we know it's even fewer that report it, because some don't want to be considered crazy or seen by their friends and family as unstable, but also some don't want to deal with the ramifications that admitting that it's true might have on their life, that they've been taken against their will, oftentimes throughout their entire lifetime. A lot of people don't want to face that on their daily lives.
Yeah, and you know what? That attitude is the same up here in Canada, where it's still kind of a taboo subject to get into anything paranormal, because we Canadians just don't talk about that kind of stuff, except for the weirdos like ones who host this show. But nonetheless, these situations are happening. Is there an abduction story from Minnesota that really sets the tone?
Well, I'll give you a story of a UFO encounter that sets the tone. Way up by the Canadian border is a small town called Warren, Minnesota. And it was here that a police officer, Val Johnston, was driving his patrol car late at night, and he saw what appeared to be a bright light. He thought maybe it was a plane, but it was descending very fast. He thought it might be coming down in the area. So he started driving toward it, and then it started coming down even faster at him, where he thought it was going to crash into him. So he actually sped up to try to get underneath it. And as he did, that's really the last of what he remembered. And he woke up, and he had been missing time, and his car was completely damaged. The headlight was broken out. The windshield was shattered from what appeared to be the inside. His antenna was bent at an odd angle, which researchers had a very hard time duplicating without breaking similar antennas. And he was missing time, and he thought that it was UFO related. And this was 1979 when this happened. And the beauty of it is that the car, that UFO Warren UFO car, is now on display at their museum, at their historical society, for everybody to go and check it out themselves. And of course, many of your listeners, I think it was the second season of Fargo, the TV show, that dealt with this UFO sighting as a central theme in its entire season.
That's incredible. Incredible. Chad Lewis is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, and we are talking monsters and hauntings around. We're going to stick with Minnesota here, as we got about 90 seconds before the break. Quick paranormal story. What's the best ghost story you've heard out of Minnesota?
Best ghost story of Minnesota. Great. Probably my favorite is Forepaw's Restaurant in St. Paul. Joseph Forepaw quickly took on a mistress back in the late 1800s. His wife found out and put an end to it. He took a pistol and ended his own life. His mistress then took a rope and took her life at the end of that rope up on the third floor of their house, which is now a restaurant where you can eat there. And there's a chandelier right where she took her life, and many people see her spirit still hanging from that chandelier as they're trying to eat their nightly dinner.
Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine, you're out for a nice romantic dinner and you look up and there's a lady hanging right above you? That would be terrible.
So many people have seen her and the ghost of Joseph Forepaugh that they believe the spirits of Joseph and Molly, his mistress, are continuing their ill-fated love affair even from the grave.
Oh, how romantic. How romantic. Coming up next with Chad Lewis, author, researcher, we're going to continue our tour around the United States for some of the best hauntings and cryptid-type stories right here on Spaced Out Radio. Chad's website, ChadLewisResearch.com. That's ChadLewisResearch.com. Stay tuned for more Spaced Out Radio coming up.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thanks for coming along for the ride here on the show. Remember, if you've missed part of this show or others, you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Take a listen to our free archives to any show that you want. We'd appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. If you're looking at our website, wondering what's going on, we got a brand new website being built just for you. So stay tuned. It's going to launch here in a couple of weeks. Tonight we are talking monsters and hauntings around the United States and the world. When it comes to it, the man looking at it, Chad Lewis. He's got 16 books out. You could go on Amazon or any major bookstore or his website, chadlewisresearch.com, to check him on out. Highly suggest you do. Chad, welcome back to the show. Appreciate your time.
It's always fun talking monsters, isn't it?
It totally is. It totally is, my friend. You have traveled around the world looking for monsters and creatures. Let's head down to Belize and Nicaragua, where you were checking out if the hellhounds were real. What did you find out?
Well, what I found out is, like with other similar creatures around the world, is that many cultures take these creatures much more seriously than we do here in the United States, and probably you in Canada as well, that everywhere I went looking for these things, which they called cadeos, and there were two versions of these hellhounds. One was a black one and one was a white one. And everywhere I went looking for these things, people thought I was crazy. They said, we don't go looking for them. We try to avoid them, because they believe that when you go looking for the weird comes looking for you. That many cultures were afraid to even mention the name of some of these creatures, believing that that was enough to put you on its radar, that it could come after you because it knows of you. So I was amazed that so many people saw it as a real thing. And, of course, that didn't happen as much in the big cities. It's like going into downtown Chicago and asking about werewolf sightings in downtown Chicago, and it's not the same as the rural areas. But a lot of these rural areas is where they would tell us you better be in at nightfall, because if you're not in before dark, you might encounter one of these cadeos. And they believed that these things had supernatural powers, that if they saw you, and they would connect with you and slowly start to steal your energy. And unless you could find a powerful shaman or a bush doctor to remove the curse of the cadeo, you'd be dead within a week of seeing these monsters. So we made it a point to stay out past dark every night, and luckily, the cadeos didn't find us, but they had similar beliefs like we do in the U.S., that these things are harbingers of death, that they guard portals to hell, that they do the devil's bidding, that you do not want to see them. But on the flip side, they had a huge minority of sightings where these things would guide somebody who was intoxicated back to their village and make sure they made it and without going into the river or drowning. So sometimes they seem to be a benefit for people, but far too often they were a curse.
What exactly is a hellhound for those who don't know?
Well, hellhounds are usually large black or dark brown dogs, abnormally large. Often they will have glowing red or green eyes. Many cultures believe that they're nearly transparent and that they do guard portals to hell or portals of a sinister nature, and that oftentimes people believe they have the ability to turn themselves invisible if they so choose, and that they can exhibit features that no known animal on earth could. I had a gentleman who contacted me. He was at a place that is known for hellhounds here in the Midwest, and he was surrounded. Him and his buddies took their motorcycles out there, and he was this big burly biker guy. The type of guy you wouldn't think would get spooked by anything. But as soon as they got there, they were terrified by these hellhounds. And when I asked him why he thought they were hellhounds and not just wild black dogs, he said several things stood out to him. One, they had glowing red eyes. Two, they were nearly transparent. He could almost see right through them. And three, no matter how fast him and his buddies went on their motorcycles, these things kept up with them. And it wasn't until he went to kick one and his big boot went right through it that the thing finally disappeared. So these creatures that have been reported in every culture around the planet seem to exhibit the same type of behavior, even though they're thousands of miles apart. And cultures that, till recently wouldn't have swapped stories.
Now, also in that same area of Belize and even down into Guatemala, you went looking for Tata Duende.
Yeah, the duende, as we were talking about earlier, these hidden stories of creatures that should get a lot more attention, but they don't. Duende is one of my favorite creatures. The duende, usually a male, is a protector of the jungle. He's a diminutive creature, and people have a hard time tracking him because he's a small guy and his feet are turned backwards, so nobody can track him, even though everybody knows his feet are turned backwards. And he often appears wearing a sombrero. Sometimes he'll have a machete or a guitar, and there's a ton of folklore about this creature that you shouldn't try to find it or to hunt it. And it was said that if you're out in the jungles or the forests there, which Central America has some of the most beautiful forests in the world, that if you're disrespectful to the forest, the duende will come out and grab you and take you to its lair, and you will never be seen or heard from again. And the duende, of course, only has 4 fingers, so it's missing a thumb. So everywhere we went, the equivalent of the forest rangers would tell us that if you see the duende, tuck your thumb in and wave to it with your palm facing you so it cannot see your thumb, so it won't come, because the legend is if it sees your thumb, it will come and rip your thumb off.
Oh, not these little digits, man. Not these ones. I need these.
And I actually spoke with a forest ranger who said that when he was a young boy, and he was warning us not to go looking for this creature. When he was a young boy, he was playing in his backyard near a national forest type area there, and he saw this little man playing music and singing a song, and it was like the song put him in a trance, and the young boy started walking toward this creature on the edge of the property, and he was going to go into the woods with this creature. And at that very moment, the boy's mother yelled from the house to come home and eat dinner. And he said it was like his mother's voice snapped him out of the spell, and he ran back crying to his mother's house, saying he almost was taken by the duende.
Oh, that would be eerie. Is the duende known for kidnapping children?
It's supposed to take children and adults. At any time anyone goes missing in the jungles or the forest, which is very easy to do there, they blame it on the duende, that he often will lure people into the woods. And it's just one of the Central American creatures that seem to lure people into the woods. And a lot of the people we talked with that were skeptics believed it was an allegory, that they used these stories to get people to stop wandering into the dangerous jungles and woods on their own. So they created these stories of these monsters.
On your world travels, you also decided to hit, a lot of other countries. Transylvania for vampires, for one. But I got to head over to Ireland, Scotland, and France. If I didn't, my audience would be bugging the living daylights out of me. Chad, what about gnomes? What did you learn about gnomes?
Well, getting back to the whole idea that to really experience these legends, you have to experience the culture and the people in which they exist. And nowhere was that more evident to me than in Ireland, looking for the little people, whether you call them fairies, gnomes, goblins, trolls, the hidden folk, the good folk, sprites, whatever you call them, looking for them. And I would often go into a pub in Ireland and ask where all the gnomes and goblins hang out. And people in the pub would say, which ones do you want to know about? Whereas most of your listeners, if they try doing that in their hometown, they'll probably get thrown out of the bar thinking they're already intoxicated. But over there, the belief was that these things are just part of the environment. That, well, that's not weird that you're asking about gnomes. Of course, here they are. And I loved that because there were so many long legends of these creatures, these tricksters, if you will, that most people just accepted that they're part of the existence. There wasn't really a debate about it.
David Weatherly actually gave me heck about gnomes because they kind of freaked me out. Not going to lie, they kind of freaked me out a little bit. And he gave me heck. He said, Dave, you're bringing negative energy to the gnomes. He goes, you can't be doing that because they will come to get you. They will come to affect you. And he told an amazing story about how another buddy of his tried to kick a gnome one day that was alive, and all of a sudden he was hit with a ton of bad luck. Have you heard stories like that before?
Yes, most cultures, including in Ireland, believe that when you go looking for these creatures, you need to bring an offering with you, whether it's traditional tobacco, a shiny rock, some candy, something, so they will not curse you, because they believe that these things can take your sight, your hearing, or even your life as they lull you into a sleep and you never return from their world. And I had a very similar experience. I was in Pipestone, Minnesota, which is a national monument area, and it's a sacred area. It's where the native people get the stone, they quarry it to make their pipes, their ceremonial sacred pipes. And they believe that the stone there is red literally from the blood of their ancestors. And everywhere I went, people were telling me about the little people out at the sacred monument. So I went out there and I found a place that I thought, if these little people exist, this looked like a great place for them to exist. A river was running through, rocky area, dark green grass, beautiful nature area. So I sat down under this tree and I put out my bait, or my offering, if you will. I had some M&Ms at the time, and I put them out and I called out for the little people to make themselves known to me. And I was sitting under a tree and nothing happened, but 15 minutes later, something fell out of the tree into my hair. And as you know, my hair is kind of crazy, but there was nothing in there. And then 15 minutes later, the same thing happened. And then as I was sitting there, I felt all of a sudden like I was going to fall asleep. It was a beautiful day. I had just walked 1.5 miles from my haunted hotel out there. So there's no reason to be drowsy, but I said, if I don't stand up, I'm going to fall asleep. So I walked back to the visitor center, and I was immediately refreshed. Maybe it was the air conditioning, maybe something else. So I started talking to one of the stone carvers, and they have stone carvers there. They're the cultural ambassadors. They carve the stone and answer our questions. And I started asking about the little people, and she said she had been there 20 years, her mother 40. They'd often hear and see the little people playing with pipes in a locked back room, but they would scatter. But she said the most common thing that would happen to her and her mother is they'd be working when it would feel like a fly would land in their hair. And when they went to check, there was nothing there. They believed it was the little people tugging on their hair in a playful manner, just like what had happened to me under that tree. I thought it was an acorn or branch falling, but could have been either way. But as I was leaving, she said, whatever you do, do not call out for the little people, because they will find you. And I didn't have the heart to tell her I was just out there calling out for them, but luckily, knock on wood here, I'm still here today.
Couple questions from our audience coming up here. Catherine is wondering, why is tobacco an offering to a non-human spirit? What does it do?
Well, tobacco was a sacred offering. It was used in a lot of ceremonies, like sage is used by a lot of people today. So it was seen as an instrument into the afterlife. And it was seen as a offering that would appease these spirits, because obviously they would like tobacco as well. So it was used as a means to appease these things so they would not harm you. But over the years, other things have come into that realm as well. As I mentioned, it could be something as simple as a shiny, cool rock that looks interesting, or some type of candy or food. Oftentimes in the old countries, it was thought you leave out milk or treats for these creatures, these little people, so they would come to your house, or the ones that lived there in your fireplace or near your fires where a lot of them would live. And if you set out food and cream and treats, that would keep them happy, and they would continue to live there and not bother you, and to help with your work. They would help keep the house clean and protect the home. So it really, for the cost of a little bit of cream or a little bit of snacks, you were putting an insurance policy out on the little people.
And it seems, whether it's the gnomes or whether it's leprechauns in Ireland or whatever the little people species may be, those who have it as a part of their culture, whether it's the Cherokee or the First Nations up here in Canada, whether it's in Ireland, Iceland, wherever it may be, they take this pretty seriously comparatively to people here in North America who are usually pretty closed-minded on the subject outside of garden ornaments.
Yeah, and if we do, they're fun. We see them, they're mini cartoon movies with the gnomes, or the gnome that was a spokesperson for a travel company. We take them in a fun, playful manner, but really, if you look through the old literature, they are dark, they're sinister, they're tricksters, and they're something that you do not want to get involved with. And for a lot of people around the world, they still hold that belief that these things are simply something you avoid at all costs.
Why the avoidance?
Well, it's easy that if you avoid these things, they can't harm you, theoretically, that once you start looking for them and going out and calling out for them, again, that puts you on their radar, that if you avoid it, much like avoiding anything, you're not going to be eaten by a shark if you avoid the ocean, that these things can't harm you. And some cultures believe that, again, you avoid not only looking for these things, but you avoid talking about them, certainly mentioning them by name. I've given many lectures around the country, and there are certain areas where different cultures live where they've asked me to avoid talking about a certain creature because they did not want, even though it wasn't them mentioning it, they did not want me mentioning it while I was at their area because it would bring these creatures to the area.
Almost like a tulpa type effect.
It really was, but instead of, the tulpa where it's the belief that creates these things, they believed that it was the mentioning that would draw them forward, that almost like a dog whistle, that we can live separate from these things, but once you start talking about them, once you start naming them and calling out for them, that's when perhaps maybe the portal between worlds or the veil between worlds gets smaller and smaller.
Do you buy the whole veil thing, the thinning of the veil? So many spiritual people are into that. To me, it never makes sense. I don't believe in it.
What I've learned, I love that. What I learned over the last 20-some years is these legends, they don't operate on a timetable. They don't have a punch card. They don't there's so many legends where they'll only happen on the second Saturday of the month, or
yes,
3 a.m. Things only happen at 3 a.m. They don't punch a clock. So, yeah, I'm really hesitant to buy into the fact of the veil gets thinner and thinner.
Oh,
I mean, the belief was, of course, around Halloween, the veil gets thinner and thinner. But
yes.
That whole idea, so much of this is speculation to begin with, that I don't think we need to add more speculation as to when these things will happen. And I found that to be completely inaccurate in terms of these things only happen at specific times or dates, that oftentimes with hauntings, I'll get more people that experience it during the day than at nighttime, when many believe that's the witching hour, the time when these things are most active, when in actuality it looks better on TV at night, and that's why people think they occur at night.
Same thing with the whole Mercury retrograde, my friend. I don't understand it, don't believe it. If Mercury could affect me that much from that far away, then I'm obviously losing in life. That's all I'm going to say. Obviously losing in life. I'm going to ask you to sit tight here because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Chad Lewis is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, author, lecturer, researcher, 16 books that you can choose from on his website, ChadLewisResearch.com. The website, once again, ChadLewisResearch.com. Coming up, we are going to learn about a few more monsters along his tales. From spooky lights, crop circles, the Momo, and we'll see where else it goes in the final hour coming up after this. At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Come hang out with Spaced Out Radio, where we own the night. This is Carl. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to chat with us live. On Instagram, at Dave Scott SOR. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. SOR archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. Come join us, or I will come join you. See you at your window.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar-Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for the stories of the strange and weird that you will find hard to find anywhere else? Check out the SOR Newswire on our website. Our writers, led by Captain Shirk, are scouring the world for the oddest and most bizarre stories we can find. Everything from weird crime to suspenseful and paranormal. We're working hard for you to bring you the most intriguing news of your day. Check out the SOR Newswire at spacedoutradio.com today.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. only on Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Canada's largest UFO conference is ready to roll in Toronto this September 21st and 22nd at the Alien Cosmic Expo. This year is about the experience. Listen to the stories of Dave Scott, Travis Walton, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Ryan Stacey, Richard Dolan, Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and more. Get your tickets now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, we get into the weird, the strange UFO occurrences with Sebastian Martin. We're also going to talk about the disappearance of Granger Taylor on Vancouver Island here in British Columbia. We get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hi to everyone listening in New Orleans on UPRN 107.7 FM, KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, WQEE 99.1 FM in Newnan, Georgia, and on KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon. On the digital side, we have Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio tuned on in. Thank you so much for listening to us tonight. And of course, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Logoria is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. It is currently under construction. We're going to have a brand new look coming up in just a couple of weeks. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Chad Lewis. His website, chadlewisresearch.com. That's chadlewisresearch.com. On there, you can find everything he writes about, including his 16 books that he has out on very strange and weird topics. Chad, thank you so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here.
It's going fast, my friend. It's going fast. We're going to start off with a question from Uncle Dale. This gets right back. We never know if it's Dale or his mustache who are asking the question, because he's got one of them great mustaches. And he is asking, do you believe there is any connection between hellhounds, temple dogs, and or foo dogs?
Tough question. And, different cultures see these things differently. And there are some cultures where you can not only see these things, but you can conjure them up. And devil dogs, hellhounds, mysterious black dogs, old shuck, and the like, they're known by many different names, but is it perhaps that they're all have a similar or sinister type agenda? I don't know. I've never seen them. I talked to many people who have that report that they're terrified, even though you shouldn't be of a regular size or even abnormally large dog. Yes, dogs can instill fear in us, but not to the level of what researchers found with these witnesses, that it's uncanny the amount of fear people have of these creatures when really they shouldn't. As I mentioned earlier with the stories of people finding them when they're in their vehicle. You're in today's vehicle, the SUV here in the U.S., vehicles are gigantic. You shouldn't be afraid of any animal out on this planet in some of the vehicles we drive around here in the U.S. So I guess for the answer would be long-winded. I have no idea.
Crop circles. There's a lot of debate about these crop circles on whether or not they are man-made, naturally made, or alien-made. They seem to pop up in areas of the Midwest of the United States, Midwest of Canada as well. What do you think is causing these?
Well, I think it's a combination of hoaxes, weather phenomena, and then unexplained things. And it might be all three of those or none of those. I've been to several dozen crop formations in the Midwest over the last 20 years, some of which I've been baffled at how someone could have made them or something could have made them. Others seem to be hoaxed. And one not too far from my hometown, where a farmer was getting up to go to work. He was in his shed listening to the radio talking about terrible weather coming in. When he looked out onto his neighbor's farm, he saw the crop moving through the wind like waves in an ocean. And then he saw this black cloud-like object come over, 7 seconds, push down on the crop, and then it left. And then he was left with a crop formation, 3-circle type formations. He believed it was possibly weather-induced, or maybe that it wasn't really a cloud he was actually looking at. But what I'm amazed at is that, and maybe is different there in Canada, is that it seems like these formations have really dwindled over the last decade or so, that I do not get as many reports of them, that's for sure, and I don't hear of as many as well.
Do you think they're a dying fad, or do you think they're still happening? Because over in England, there were a couple of gentlemen who said they'd go sneak off after a couple of beers at the old pub and head into the forest to freak people out with some of these crop circles. However, there are people who believe they've seen craft or orbs cutting through the skies and moving near the wheat fields and creating these patterns, which could be some sort of navigational chart. It's hard to see where we actually stand on those.
I agree, and a lot of the witnesses report UFO sightings either before, during, or directly after a formation has been discovered. And the formations themselves, when you take soil samples and crop samples, and back when BLT research, Nancy Talbot and her colleagues were doing a lot of the scientific work on it, they were finding strange anomalies from the affected samples versus the control samples of these formations. And of course, many people in the general public do believe that it was Doug and Dave, the two old British men who were making these, thanks mainly to a lot of 1990s documentaries. But if they have been, they've been doing it for a long time, and they've been all over the world, because these formations seem to have appeared in nearly every culture on the planet in all kinds of different crops, from wheat, barley, oats, corn, even to ice of these formations. So I'm baffled by these formations, but again, I don't know if it's a phenomena that has passed and is slowing down, or maybe they were hoaxed and people just got sick of hoaxing them. But it seems like they're certainly not getting the media attention that they once did. And two, a lot of the researchers that I work with, we're just not getting as many reports as we used to. And I don't know if people are not reporting it. That could be the case, because many of these ranchers and farmers, they're upset. They don't care what's doing it. They're upset because they lose that crop, and they might even lose next year's crop because of the damage done. They see it as an act of vandalism.
If it was extraterrestrial, could we look at the fact that these incredibly articulate pieces of work are some sort of navigational chart?
Well, that's one of the theories. I know people have put them into 3D projection and made music out of them and looked at all kinds of possibilities. I myself would think that if something or someone came here from somewhere else, they probably don't need the primitive crop formations for navigation. I think they probably have figured that out if they got here from somewhere else. But again, maybe it's just beyond our comprehension. Maybe it is as simple as navigational tools or graffiti or whatever other explanation is out there. But deep down, I would hesitate to think that they're navigational, road signs, if you will, because I would assume that these things are pretty good at navigating if they got here. But again, I could be wrong.
Let's jump up to the state of Missouri for the Momo.
Yeah, Momo is an interesting creature, and if any of your listeners are interested in Momo, researcher Lyle Blackburn has just put out a good book on the Momo. It's a fun read about the creature. And, by all accounts, Momo, by most people's accounts, in the 1970s when it was mostly being seen in 72 and 73, is that it was a Bigfoot-type creature, but it was covered in this thick, matted down fur, often dark brown or black in color. And it really terrorized the people of Missouri for a good year and a half, 2 years, and then it seemed to die out and be reported in other places around the country.
When does this creature seem to come out? Is it nocturnal? Is it daytime? Is it only located in forests? Let us know.
What's interesting is not just with Momo, the Missouri monster, as you mentioned, but also other Bigfoot-type Sasquatch-looking things, is that they've been reported both day and night. Oftentimes, the nighttime sightings are by roadsides, people driving by when they catch something big moving across the road. At first, they think it's the size of a bear, but it's shaped bigger. It's a biped walking on its hind legs, and they often see it darting across the road, moving too fast for any known animal, and just catching a glimpse of it, 2 strides clearing the road. So not only does it happen in day and night, but also in areas you wouldn't necessarily consider it as being, that people have spotted it in their backyard and not areas where it's not heavily forested, but may have a small forested area. In Illinois, by the Big Muddy River, which is in Murfreesboro, southern Illinois, this Bigfoot-type creature, which is more of a white-furred creature there, often shows up as though it's traveling using the rivers for navigation.
Last night we talked Sasquatch in this show with British Columbia researcher Robert Kennedy, and one of the topics that we talked about when it comes to creatures like Momo or Sasquatch or whatever it may be, always tends to seem around logging and logging companies. There's a lot of strangeness that seems to go on with that. Have you noticed some of these areas that have the Momo or the skunk ape or Bigfoot, that they are really, really affected or have a high volume of action around logging sites?
It certainly is true here in the Midwest. In the Northwoods of Wisconsin and Minnesota was where a lot of the lumberjack lore comes from. That, here in Wisconsin, we claim to be the birthplace of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox, but so does Minnesota, Michigan, Vermont, and Maine, but that's beside the point. But we had a huge lumberjack history and folklore here. And not only would you get stories of mythical creatures out of whether it was the hodag or the hoop snake or the creature that could only run on a hill because half of its side legs were smaller than its left half, so it could only run on a hill at a tilt. So you get all kinds of those creatures, but you also get reports of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch along these logging camps that would go in during the winter. And it makes sense if you consider these things flesh and blood, that if their habitat is being destroyed, that would spark up a lot of activity. But it also seems of these creatures that don't seem to be flesh and blood, it affects them as well. I don't know why.
Sticking in Missouri, you have the spook lights, or the Hornet spook light. What's that all about?
In the Hornet spook light, or sometimes it's referred to as the Joplin spook light, is this mysterious ball of light that would appear at night along an old road near railroad tracks and electrical lines. And these spook lights, as they're known, appear all over the world, and a lot of them are very similar looking. We have an infamous one in Michigan called the Paulding light. Now, if you were dropped out of an airplane in Paulding at their light, you wouldn't know if you were in Joplin or Paulding because the area looks identical, a large hill where these lights pop up. And there's always a story associated with them, usually of a haunting. In Paulding, it's of a former railroad worker his job was to light a lantern every night to make sure the train came in safely, and one night he overslept and the train crashed and a bunch of people died, and now he haunts the area with his lantern, making sure that it never happens again. A lot of people discount the spook lights as nothing more than headlights or taillights from a nearby road reflecting off of the atmosphere and then being projected, even though a lot of these stories, they predate vehicles being in the area. And sometimes it's even more baffling that people claim they've been chased out of the woods by these lights, almost as though they were under intelligent control. And people have all kinds of mechanical issues out there. Cars not starting, batteries dying, needing to be jumped or towed out of an area. I myself had a weird experience with a colleague of mine at the Paulding light. As we were driving home from our investigation, we just left the Paulding light, and the police pulled over my colleague and said, "Your lights are not working." He said, "That's impossible, brand new vehicle." But we got out of the vehicle, the lights weren't working. Shut it off, started it up, worked fine. Never had an issue with the lights ever again. But yet, leaving these areas, they seem to have some effect not only on people, but machinery too.
Why would they affect machinery?
Well, that's the interesting part, is that if there are places where weird energy is taking place, electromagnetic energy of some sort, maybe it would drain. We're all familiar with the theory that somehow ghosts are able to drain cameras. You always hear of people claiming that they go into a place with brand new fresh batteries in their equipment, and all of a sudden it stops working, the batteries are completely drained. The same theory is often applied to these spook lights. And what I find interesting is every time I've been to the Joplin spook lights, there have been several dozen cars of people lined up along the road waiting for these things to occur. And a lot of them, it seems like the closer you get to the light, the further away it appears. that it always seems to maintain its same distance from your perspective, no matter whether you're a couple miles down the road or a few miles closer.
That almost seems like a Western type story in the Wild West, where they were hauling gold out by some of these old railroad tracks.
Well, outside of rivers, railroad tracks seem to have the most paranormal activity associated with them. There's a famous bridge in Iowa called Terror Bridge, where it's thought to be haunted by a pile-driving railroad worker who was hitting spikes into the railroad, and one came out and decapitated him. And these strong, hardy railroad workers refused to cross the bridge at night because they would see his spirit, but they also would see the ghostly image of a phantom train coming toward them. They could hear the engine, they could see the light, they could feel the rumbling of the train, but the train never arrived. And they believed that the train itself was actually haunted. So I think outside of rivers, trains have, and especially bridges of trains, have the most paranormal activity associated with them.
Moving on, you also did some work in some castles in London and in South Dakota. Tunnels and castles seem to go synonymous with each other. And I don't know, being in a dark tunnel just absolutely scares the daylights out of me. I don't think I would be scared of a ghost in a castle, my friend. But tunnels, different story.
Yeah, I think tunnels play on our fear not only of the dark and the unknown, but those who do not like confined spaces. If you're claustrophobic, you won't like the tunnels, because if something were to appear, you really have one option, is to run the other way, and sometimes blindly in the dark. So I think that plays into the fear of, plus just that subterranean feel that gives people the creeps of just being there. Even if there's no story associated with it, which there usually is, people have trouble in tunnels. And deserted places, we were talking earlier of abandoned factories and old caves and old abandoned coal mines. They seem to be the breeding ground of these cryptids that for some reason they love lurking on the outskirts of where people used to be.
So what's hiding in the tunnels? Is it just ghosts, or do we have some cryptid tales like we do with the alligators of the tunnels of New York?
Most of the tales of tunnels are haunted tales. Often that there are people buried there, whether it was a disease that passed through or a terrible tragedy or murders and bootlegging, that people are buried there and causing hauntings. But there are many caves, like a cave in Van Meter, Iowa, again, where this bat-like creature was said to descend in and out of this cave, using it as its lair or its launching pad to terrorize people. So oftentimes caves have these stories of cryptids using the caves, much like haunted tunnels.
The problem with tunnels is you never know what you're going to run into. And especially if there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it is eerie, especially if you hear things moving. I mean, your first thought is rats. I mean, you don't think aliens right off the bat. At least, even I don't do that. Even I don't do that. But I know that's hard to believe for some out there. But with only about 2 minutes left with you tonight, do you recommend people going to check out some of these tunnels?
I do. I think it's important that we experience not only our history, but also the adventure of it. If you've ever been in a tunnel or a cave system where they shut off their lights in there, they'll warn you. It's amazing how pitch black it is, that there's no light seeping in, where you can't see your hand no matter how close you put it to your face. And I think people should experience that and realize that that was the working condition for a lot of people for many years, not much better than pitch black they were working in. And I think that a lot of these stories sprung up out of the hardship of working in caves and mines, that these stories continue even though the work itself may have long ceased.
My friend, we only have 1 minute with you tonight left. I would love it if you told our audience where you'll be speaking, where they can find your books, your website, everything.
Sure. Just go to my website, chadlewisresearch.com, and the more bizarre and weird the legend is, the more likely you'll find me there.
That is absolutely awesome. And you continue your good work. You got any speaking engagements coming up?
Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow for Iowa. I do about 200 a year through the Midwest, and that's all available on my website. So if you want to come hear some stories or tell me some stories, I'm always looking for new cases.
Awesome. Chad, what a pleasure having you on the show tonight. Just fantastic. We got to do this again.
Well, thank you, and keep an eye out.
Absolutely. That's what we got to do. Chad Lewis, everybody, chadlewisresearch.com. If you want to check out his website, 16 books for you to choose from. Go check it on out. Well worth it. Coming up next, we got the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Day to finish off the third and final hour of tonight's show. Stay tuned. More Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Coming up this September 21st and 22nd, all UFO eyes will be focused on Toronto for the 4th Annual Alien Cosmic Expo. Come listen to some of the biggest names and experiencers in ufology. Travis Walton, Paul Hellyer, Richard Dolan, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, Randy Kramer, and Spaced Out Radio's own Dave Scott. Tickets are on sale now at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Come get spooked at the 4th Annual Forest Moon Paracon in Cedar Woolley, Washington, Saturday, September 28th. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. Speakers include Mike Morin and Jason Jordan, R. Keith Andrews, and Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and so much more. There will be workshops and a VIP roundtable. Get early bird tickets now at fmparacon.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Reminder, if you missed portions of this show and you want to catch up on them or any others, you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. And our website, spacedoutradio.com, currently under construction. Going to have a brand new look here in just a couple of weeks. Now, it's time for the weird, the wacky, the WTF, the SOR Newswire put together by Captain Shirk. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get into the weird, the wacky, the strange, and the stories that just make you scratch the top of your head. All of them brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. And if you want to check out the SOR Newswire, go to our Facebook page, SOR Newswire. That's all you need to do. Hit that like button as well. We'd like that as well. So you remember a couple of months ago, Oumuamua flew by, and there was all this excitement that it was potentially the first that we know of alien life form from another star system. Well, now they're saying maybe Oumuamua wasn't, after all. Go figure. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb and Harvard undergraduate Amir Siraj took data from a worldwide network of U.S. government sensors designed to scan the skies for missiles and instead searched for meteors moving fast enough to have come from outside our solar system. They found a yardstick-sized object that slammed into Earth at 37 miles per second. 37 miles per second. Wow. And by tracing its path, concluded that it came from interstellar space. The object is thought to have disintegrated before reaching the ground, but its existence raises the possibility that interstellar objects could be studied firsthand. Loeb said the government system could be modified to alert scientists when fast-moving meteors are detected, so they can search for fragments that survived all the way to the ground. He says it's a new way of looking for interstellar objects. As Loeb, who raised eyebrows in 2018 when he said Oumuamua could have been an alien spacecraft, he continues saying, it saves you the trip. You don't need to go to another planetary system. You may get material objects you could potentially examine right here. Remember the old story of the beheading of Anne Boleyn? And the rumors around that, whether after her head was chopped off, that she was actually talking? Well, trying to figure it out. Was she or was she not? Big debate right now going on. So, Charlotte Corday was executed by guillotine in 1793. A man named Francois Legros, notice how I rolled the tongue there, allegedly lifted her head and slapped both cheeks. Onlookers claim that Corday's face took an angry expression and her cheeks became flushed. There are other reports from history of severed heads that seem to show signs of consciousness. Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VII, apparently tried to speak after being beheaded. But are these stories bogus or are they real? Well, let's do some research on that, shall we? In recent years, there's been significant interest in what has been called the world's first potential human head transplant. If it were to go ahead, no pun intended, and that is increasingly unlikely, the transplant would push multiple boundaries of science, the most obvious being one whether the head and its contents might survive following the removal from its original body and for how long. The brain and all its structures it supplies need oxygen to function. Once the blood vessels in the neck are severed, the oxygen supply is halted. Whatever oxygen remains in the blood and tissues after the fatal blow would certainly be there for use, but it wouldn't last very long. Most recently, understanding in this area of research has turned to what people who suffer death or near-death experiences are aware of when they go through such events. People who have suffered a heart attack or cardiac arrest describe events that were occurring to them or in the room around them while undergoing resuscitation. This suggests that while their heart may not be beating, the brain is well aware of what is going on around them, even though people display none of the clinical signs of consciousness. So, did she speak or did she not? Let the debate continue. This is one that I really don't want to find out on my own. That would kind of suck. You know? It's horrible, horrible story. Don't like this one either, but we got to talk about it. In Castasegna, Switzerland, there's a big debate going on right now. Because Giovanni Albertini crossed a checkpoint in the Switzerland-Italy border, a 2-hour drive from Milan. Well, had something really nice with them. A scarf. Now, a scarf really wouldn't immediately impress you or me, wrinkled, beige, speckled with tiny, crinkly hairs. But problem is, this scarf came from a very, very rare animal, the Tibetan antelope. So apparently, these rare antelope and their fur are being hunted down to make $20,000 scarves. On the luxury market, there's like, oh, you have to have this scarf. You have to. Everyone needs one. Why? Chatouche comes from a short, warm fleece of the rare Tibetan antelope, a species found almost exclusively in the Chatang area of Tibet on the Tibetan plateau. It takes 4 animals to provide enough wool for just one chatouche shawl or scarf. Because the antelope are wild animals that can't be domesticated and shorn, the only way to get the wool is to kill them and strip it from their carcasses. Smugglers then sneak the raw wool into India, where artisans in Kashmir weave it into neck-warming wraps. Global demand for the chatouche wiped out 90% of the Tibetan antelope population during the previous century, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which sets the conservation status of wildlife species. Once a valued dowry item in India, chatouches are now sought primarily by Westerners, who may pay as much as $20,000 for a single shawl of the right size, color, or design. Conservation biologist George Schaller, who has studied the antelope since the 1980s, says, the males are spectacularly beautiful with their long, thin horns and black and white winter coats. He says, adding that when the tan females and their young start moving en masse, it looks as if an entire hill is in motion. The phenomena is more stunning because it happens in such a wild, remote landscape. You literally have thousands of square miles with no people at all. But, of course, in our greed, we got to kill this rare animal. Why? For a neck scarf. A bloody neck scarf. So, back in the 90s, the Tibetan antelope, numbered in around 1 million animals, heads of animals. Yeah, that's down to about 75,000 now. Yeah, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? So this scarf that was found by this gentleman was the equivalent of 12 dead Tibetan antelopes. Terrible. Terrible. Don't get it. All right. Let's head over to the loch for the famous Loch Ness Monster in Scotland. A new study suggests that the legend of the Loch Ness Monster and other long-necked sea monsters may have been influenced by something very real and even more terrifying. Hold your pants here. Dinosaurs. Go figure. Published in the scientific journal Earth Sciences History, the study theorizes that the sea serpents reports of early 19th century were heavily influenced by dinosaur fossil discovery. Over the last 200 years, there is indeed evidence of a decline in serpentiform sea serpent reports and an increase in the proportion of reports with necks, but there is no evidence for an increase in the proportion of mosasaur-like reports. The study says, however, witnesses only began to unequivocally compare sea serpents to prehistoric reptiles in the late 19th century, some 50 years after the suggestion was first made by naturalists. Go figure. Loch Ness Monster, potentially a dinosaur? Well, there we go. Who would have known? Who would have known? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. I think we got time for one more. Let's head down to Florida, shall we? Of course. So, not a good story here. A 72-year-old man is in jail because he was pretty upset with his nephew. Dan Johnson made his first court appearance on attempted murder charges. Why? Because he stabbed his nephew for taking too long in the bathroom. Yeah, that you got to kill someone or try to kill someone for using the potty a little bit too long. The nerve of it all. Old Dan there got fed up with his nephew, who apparently was wasting too much time doing whatever he was in there. There is some speculation that it wasn't a shower. Dan tried to tell him, get on out. Got to get in there. But the nephew wouldn't listen. Wouldn't pay attention. Too busy doing his own thing. So when he came out, they got in a scuffle. Landing old Dan in front of a judge, pleading for his life, trying to figure out why he would try and kill his nephew over a bathroom break. Only in Florida. Thank you, Florida, for that. We also thank Captain Shirk from the SOR Newswire for providing our news. Everything brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Let's get to the thought of the Dave. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we try to get a good question to you on a daily basis on Facebook and Twitter. Explain what you feel is the best UFO story that no one's heard of, and why should we hear about it? Well, let's get into this. We could have some good ones here. LB, it was the week of my first confession. I was 6 and had just finished my Sunday school classes and was set to do my confirmation and first communion. Prior to this, my ET contact craft would follow several times a week to my classes at the famous 300-year-old San Gabriel Mission where I lived. 3 days before my first confession with a priest on the day of my last Sunday school class, the Palladian craft appeared over the roof of the mission, then floated over to me as I crossed the street to enter the parking lot. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. People everywhere saw it. It was floating above as it has many times before, relaying a message for me to not become a priest because at that time I was extremely spiritual and divine, and my intention was to become a priest. 3 days later, I had to do my first confession with Father Tom Loftus, a close family friend and the priest at the mission. I entered the confession booth that is located in the rectory. Father Tom entered just after. Just then, a blue beam of light came down into the confession booth through the roof of the church. Father Tom ran out. I did not. I was used to craft shooting that beam at me. I have seen it many times before, yet all the priests ran out to see the craft hover over the church and shooting the light on me. Interesting. William, perhaps the 1956 radar visual case over the Lakenheath Bentwaters air bases in Great Britain. It was the kind of case that slipped under the radar. No pun intended. Okay. Catherine, 1979, Halloween night, Anchorage, Alaska. Low flying or massive in the sky UFO I called a flying saucer at the time. I tried to show it to my mother and she just said without a look, oh, it's just a satellite. But it wasn't, and it went right over our house, or at least close by. That was the first time I'd ever seen one, and while it may not have been my first paranormal experience at the age of 4 years and 10 months, it is a vision that will forever be stained in my memory. I have only ever seen it one more time, and that was back in 2011 when I saw an old early 80s UFO documentary on YouTube. The second they showed a certain UFO, my entire body went goosebumps, and I had an anxiety attack triggered. It all set in. That was the exact ship I saw. My father was a lieutenant colonel in the military there, and he was inside the house. I wish I had the time to talk to him about it, but he was staying away from all the noise of Halloween. Let's get to Tim. 1953 Kingman crash. You need to get Harry Drew, who did extensive several years investigation after moving there and getting trust of the community. He went back to the old court records, news clippings, surveys, etc. Be a great guest, Dave. Another show of a crash in 1950 that started a forest fire would be great, too. 3 casualties were hurt as 2 ambulance drivers went missing. The Aztec crash, too. Same area. Interesting. Joe, the Jesse Rostenberg case, 1954, Renton, UK, England. Why? Because she was at the time the only witness besides her 2 young sons to this close encounter, but she still came forward to tell people what she had seen. She would have been ridiculed, but she didn't care as far as she was concerned. They just wanted to make her aware they are here for whatever reason Jesse did and what she did, because she wanted to tell the truth and the truth to be told. I often wonder how many other amazing close encounters like there are out there, like Jesse's, but didn't come out due to fear of ridicule. Well, let's see. Keith decided, even though we can't really read memes, goes and puts about 7 memes on here. 8. Yeah. Gonna get airtime there, man. Nikki. Got one. Atlantis was actually a giant spaceship that was deliberately crashed into the Atlantic to cause the cataclysms that would nearly wipe out the entire global Lemurian civilization that consisted of 12 founding races. The ship was then covered in soil that was mined from all over the planet. A second cataclysm occurred when the ship left again about 12,000 years ago, which left with the infiltrators and a new power structure based on competition. Remember when I said head scratcher at the beginning of this? That might be the one. Uncle Dale. Trumbull County, 1994, UFOs tracked by about a dozen police departments. We have to get someone to talk about this. I will try that, Uncle Dale. That sounds like a good one. That's where we're going to end it for tonight. Because I'm still blown away by the Atlantis one. Seriously, people. We believe this? No proof? I got to read it. It's entertainment. My goodness. I don't know what to do with that one. I'm a little rattled by that. Okay, want to say a big thank you to Chad Lewis for coming on the show tonight, filling in for David Weatherly, who is out at a UFO-type conference that he had to participate in. But nonetheless, Dave, you hit another home run for us by bringing on a guest. Big thank you to you, my friend. Hopefully we'll have you back in June. And, of course, tomorrow night on the show, Sebastian Martin is back from Ensuho. He lives on Vancouver Island in a town called Duncan. And back in the 80s, Granger Taylor said, "I'm leaving with the aliens," and then disappeared. We're going to learn about that story tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everyone listening in at home, in your cars, at work, in our chat rooms on Spreaker, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, Wade Gab, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, Rev Radio chat room as well, wherever you may be. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great one, everybody. Good night.